Okay. Hi.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm all right.
Um, Thank you for taking the time to do this. Um,
It's been long overdue.
right. Yeah, I remember when we were celebrating the International Podcast Day, remember I reached out and said we should do this. Um, I mean, not that I don't know of so many, but I feel like you're like the most uh, should I say famous podcaster that's available at the moment that I can think of. So
I
I
don't
appreciate
agree. If I was the most famous, I'd have
take the
taken the one.
compliment. Take the
Okay.
compliment.
But yes, thank you.
So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. Kindly introduce yourself to our beloved listeners.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to really be here. My name is Keron Wamala. I am many things. I am a podcaster. I am a content creator.
Okay.
I am a digital marketer.
Okay.
I'm a salesman. I think that's where I am like a king, right? That's where I skill. That's where I invest a lot of my time in to sell things to people. I know people that have. I trade information really between people
Okay.
that know stuff and those that need that stuff. I'm like the bridge in between there.
Mm,
Yeah, I like friends. I believe we have to be kind people, so I I practice kindness a lot
mm.
with everyone. I yeah, I'm a forgiving person. I think because people have forgiven me a lot, and I'm also a product of the street. Right, the street raised me, and so that informs my perspective to life, knowing that everything is almost like vanity. Right. Yeah. In in like that. That's how I would describe it. That's how I'd introduce myself.
Okay. So since we are doing this, I'm more interested in your podcasting journey. How long have you been doing podcasting?
So I started podcasting. I started reading news, right, to students when I was still in high school.
Okay.
So as like the head monitor.
Oh.
So the question can, as the head of the media club, blah blah blah. Computers and cameras have been my thing. My dad put cameras at home at a very young age. We always had cameras, things like that. So I could see them. I would say I've been podcasting all my life, right?
Mm. Okay.
I have always been the vocal person at home, the one who will speak out their
Mm-hmm.
mind. Yeah, if we do not on Sunday, if I don't drink like passion fruit, I would really ask on the dining table, like, why are we drinking water instead of passion fruit today? So I'll take it like that. I've been speaking out, right? My opinions.
Okay.
When social media came around, I have still been vocal on there with all my platforms, really just sharing my opinions.
Okay.
So that also then feeds into the podcasting. But to do like actual podcasting, like the publishing
Yes.
to the platforms, we started in 2020.
So 3 years now.
Yeah, so it's 3 years now.
Please tell us about your podcast. For listeners who don't know, Mark is a podcast host at Big
Yeah.
Conversations, Ordinary People. Please tell us about your podcast and what it is about.
So yes, Big Conversations by Ordinary People is a sit-down conversation amongst friends and strangers, because some people on there are people I meet for the very first time, but mostly for amongst friends. So the idea around the podcast is we host a couple of people we feel like you, they're interesting to listen to, right?
Okay.
And have a conversation like you'd have on a Malaport, on any day, just really an ordinary conversation, but that is big, that is deep,
Okay.
that whoever can listen to it can pick something. So it's big because it's as diverse as you can think about it, since anyone comes onto the podcast. So anyone from any background can have a conversation with me, if that's where, if we have connected in some way and we agree to sit down to talk.
What inspired you to start in that exact department?
So it would be easier and more, and it would be easier and easily scalable that way,
Okay.
right? Because we started as friends. We were doing the podcast as amongst me, Kenneth, David, Martin, Debbie. well, about 5 people that sit around and talk to each other. When you look at season 1 of Big Conversations, it was amongst friends talking about issues. Then we switched to the hosting for the continuity, because then we got bored amongst listening to each other. We're friends, we know each other, we know how everyone vibes. So we switched to the guest hosting. People would think the world would not get a chance to listen to, but they would rather have something to share because everyone has a story. So the podcast is also produced by Yuvotam, a production house whose tagline is "Only humans can tell stories." So it's like the signature product for that. We believe everyone has their own story to tell, and it's only them to tell it. And we want to have as many people share with us their stories and their perspectives to life as possible.
Okay. How many episodes have you done so far?
We have done up to 200 episodes now and only published around 150.
Oh, so you have is it a backlog? You have pre-recorded episodes already?
Yes, there's pre-recorded episodes already, but then there's also quality control, right?
Oh, what does that mean?
So there are conversations where we feel like we didn't meet big conversations.
Oh.
And we're like, okay, no, that's too shallow for the public. We don't want that out there. We keep it.
Okay.
Then, the people that come onto the podcast maybe and they get scared with the lights and the cameras, and they're not as free. So they also request not to publish their episodes. So they'll sit down. But it's still the same effort. The guys that set it up, we count them as episodes. So they're about 200, but about 50 rejected because of content and maybe quality. And because also there's that. We could get off this podcast and something, a rat ate the wire and the camera went off. So there's that.
Okay, so I would say you've been doing this for about 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. How has it been like for you? How far have you come as a podcast host? I'm assuming
Amazing, right?
I'm assuming, did you actually start with like this whole big setup and stuff?
No.
So how has it
We started with one microphone, right?
You actually started with a microphone?
Yes. So contrary to guys who'd be like, I started my restaurant with one rice and stuff like that. This is actually
I started
true.
without a microphone.
We started with one microphone. Would sit around. We started with a microphone, the normal ordinary mixer. So we'd sit, have conversations. Then we had one camera. So if you go to season 2, the first episode with Hilary Bamlinde, and I keep referencing this guy a lot because it's the first episode, right? But the first episode with him, we lost the video footage, but it was just one single. Oh, actually, the first 5 episodes, Hilary, Richard, and these are like my mentors and friends. So the episodes we did were with just 2 mics and one camera, one Canon B camera. Then we kept adopting to how we distribute the conversations, how people consume them. So Spotify takes face-to-face for visuals. So like to get more consumption and to get people to actually listen to us on all platforms, we have to get this direction. So we switched to the phase where we're buying. Also, we took interest into the thing. It was interesting, right? We just don't do this podcast. So other people are coming on to do podcasts. So we saw that need to invest into equipment and do it at large scale.
Oh yeah, about that part. Lately, from the time you started, I think the time you started, were you like the only one doing it at that time? I feel like you were.
No, people have been doing podcasts for quite some time. It's just that I brought in the energy, right? I brought in the energy. I made it cool a little bit. Like I made it about people, and then people saw like it was a thing. Then I made it really, really. I could just get people on there that TV doesn't probably host, but they're actually people that have some bit of influence and things to say, and they have experiences. They have lived. They're business people. They're like, I don't want to use the term expert because I find it stupid in this time where everyone has access to information, but they're like thought leaders in their fields. So once we got interested in that, the conversations are first interesting between the people having them. So if I get out this podcast and I don't like the conversation, I don't publish it. But constantly, whoever came on the podcast had so much admiration. They were so inspired. They felt so good. So then that kept teaching us.
Okay. So
And yeah.
with I mean, there's so many as of today from the time you guys started. I mean, I've also popped up. There are other people that have popped up.
And you're doing amazing. I feel like, you're doing amazing. I like it.
Thank you. So what do you think of of the content today. In my experience, I feel like I struggle with people putting out probably the right information or giving value. What would you say to aspiring podcasters today?
It's dope, man. It's a cool thing. Look at the USA. Podcasters are making millionaires, right?
Yeah.
It's a thing you have to do. Okay, I'll tell you. I podcast because, well, it adds so much value to me as a human being, right? Interacting with different people, understanding their perspectives to life, researching, reading about things I'm not even really supposed to be reading about. It's like quiz. Yeah. I am going to talk to an influencer, I'm going to talk to a porn star, I'm going to talk to who, I'm going to talk to a
Well,
businessman.
it enriches your knowledge, really.
Yeah.
Like, you must.
So there's that reason as to why I do it for that. That I have this. There's so many reasons. So I do it also because I don't spend so much time with my son. Now, with that, I believe that I curate conversations. Sometimes when my co-host is hosting, I curate those conversations. I produce. I am not just a host on this, but on my podcast, I am also a producer, right? So I produce conversations. So when my co-host is hosting, I set it up in a way that it's going to be sometimes the people I bring on, that is some of the knowledge I pass on to people in my son's age, things they will. Everyone likes to learn from their dad, right? I follow up on what some of my characters, most of my characters, built on how my dad behaved when he was raising me. So that's the same way. So it's another way of raising my boy and his friends and his peers and my nieces, right? I have my co-host has 2 boys, and I am their uncle, so I kind of have to do that for them. So I also do it for them.
Okay. So now I wanted to understand, how do you, apart from you finding people that have things to say, how do you choose the stories, the conversations you have here?
So the podcast is entirely guest based,
Okay.
right? So unless I really have a topic of interest to that guest, but
Okay.
I take the direction from the guest perspective to life. So from their introduction, the things they're on about, and now it has moved from that stage where I reach out to people to come onto the podcast. Now people reach out to me a lot. So now when they reach out to me, then I have to see if really I'll have the rage to have some conversations with them, or I'll see what maybe is different, what is deep. So because the focus is to keep it deep and big. So yeah, there's no like formula on who gets onto the podcast. Because again, I told you when I was introducing myself, I'm raised from the street. I can have a conversation with just about anyone, really.
Okay. Now, I'm curious. Have you started making money off your podcast yet?
Well, so it's 2 things. Yeah, I could say I've made so much money from the podcast, but then I could say I've also made 0 money now,
Okay.
right? Because I don't advertise on this podcast. But then this
Why?
podcast, because I'm figuring out how to advertise. I'm in 2 meetings right now with
Okay.
with a bit of big guys into the fields I'm into, about how they become on as partners and how what ideas, how I incorporate them into like conversations onto my podcast. But I want to give them actual value, right? I just don't want to stamp. I feel like how it's done with everyone else advertising is a bit cliche. So I want it to be more real.
Okay.
I want it to actually be actual influence. But there are 2 ways. The podcast is also an advert to what our production house does.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Very true.
So the more we perfect the visuals, the more we perfect the audios, and then the podcast is out there, the more we get business for our production house.
True.
So then
Have you got some of those?
a lot of that, right?
Oh,
We get so much business. The podcast is the
so
official
you're
media
busy.
partner
Business
for.
is booming.
No, it's a harsh. It's a very expensive business, really. How much we've put in is quite a lot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I could tell.
Clearly. So that as compared to what we're getting, but it's promising. Yeah. Also, there's so many ways monetizing. We're pushing out episodes, so subscriptions will start paying. We have extreme access. I literally can have anyone I want in the country onto the podcast. So, and that is wealth, right? So that could mean I will put maybe a few episodes onto like some subscriptions. I'll be intentional. So it's still a process. We're observing. It could fail completely. Like there's that. Would have failed at very many other things I've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've now, speaking of podcast sprouting, you've noticed people are coming in for the money. What do you have to say about that? Do you think it's a business opportunity to start a podcast and make money off of it immediately?
Well, yeah, guys, I'm monetizing through subscriptions, adverts, and whatnot, and it's working for them.
How many episodes do you have to say, I need my first sponsor?
I still don't. Well, I don't know about other people, right? But for my case, is it's really not a rush for the money. I
So-
make money elsewhere.
Oh, so you're
and the
not
team.
doing this for the money?
I wouldn't say that. That would be not such a smart thing to say.
Okay.
Because the money is important.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, the money is a priority, but it is that's the outcome, right? That's not the process. I do this because of the process involved, the continuity. I have to wake up to do this at 9 a.m. with you.
Does it keep you awake at night? How much
Exactly.
do
Like
you
I have
love
to
this?
think about it so much that I will just walk out in the country and go see someone just to have a conversation with them. That's how much I love it.
You're doing a great job. I saw you at, what was the basketball tournament in Chicago?
Yeah, the women thing.
Yeah, I thought that was terrific.
You should have done that. I wish we were friends then. We would have done it together because you're like
I know.
some basketball person.
Yeah, next time. Now, speaking of the guests you've had here, what are some of the episodes? You mentioned Hillary, and who are some of the guests that have like been outstanding for you that you just can't stop thinking about them?
Hillary, but also I do a lot of business with him. So there's that. So Isabel, I think Isabel EG, I like her mind and perspective to life. You notice all the episodes I've so far mentioned are not episodes I've hosted myself. So, but then surprisingly, my host quit Big Conversations. They've started their own podcast. So yeah, there's that. No, they didn't
How
quit,
does that make
but
you feel?
it's fine. I still produce that podcast anyway,
Yeah.
so it's dope. But yeah, they're migrating into things they love, the music, the hip hop. They want to talk about that mostly.
Okay.
So there's Isabel. I feel good about this conversation because mostly it's you asking the questions. So this could be my best.
I pray it is.
I think it is going to be my best. So this is really inspiring for me. And also Richard, my very close friend Richard. He's been there on twice with Kenneth and with me, but giving in-depth perspective on how he feels. I feel like he's grown. He's about 42 years.
Okay.
He's been giving me life experiences, like our father in between.
Is he a mentor?
Yeah, he could pass for a mentor. Like you see, I don't know what you mean by mentorship, but anyone that I have conversations with that add some value to me, they pass to be my mentor, and I have very many of those. And that's my honey. Her episode was dope. She has fought her battles. She's really into share. Then Kenneth Muhanji.
Oh.
He's a KTA lawyer partner.
okay.
Yeah, with Asmahani.
I thought you'd said Alex Muhanji.
No, Kenneth. So him, and who among us? Josie, rest in peace to her. I used to have solid conversations with her on the podcast.
I never met her. I didn't know about her until her passing. I did an episode about her. I thought her story was
Yeah, she was a sweet
mind
soul.
blowing.
She was a perfect sweet soul.
Okay.
I hope she's resting in peace. Really, yeah, really. Those are like it.
Oh, okay. So, how have you built a community here of listeners? How would you say you've worked on building a strong community for the years you've been doing it? As in regards to growing your audience, like people who'd like, hey, Keron dropped an episode. I need to go and check it out.
So, first of all, it's there's how can I term it? I am as real as it gets, right? When I'm on the podcast, I am talking about my experiences, my life, fault or not. Most of the things I've failed at, because that's all I've done. 20 years plus I've been failing at things. So that's what I talk about. My vulnerability with life. Then relating to people. So community is also grown because I bring people I think are interesting to listen to sometimes to other people. Yeah, shout out to Joel B. and Zika, like such people that are willing to share their perspective, regardless of backlash or not, or what or not. They stand by their opinion.
Is that the word?
And I am like an advocate of free speech, so that just, I would, of course, unless you're hurting or insulting other people, I'll not have you in the pod, but I'll not publish the podcast. But I am a big advocate of free speech. I would love for people to express themselves. I felt like the internet started robbing that away from us, and no one can rob that away from my podcast. You cannot stop me from doing what I want to do.
Sure.
And also, it's the community is growing with growing trends of technology. When you look at AI and machine learning, right now it will recommend for you my podcast. Then you can skip between phases to the things you're really, really interested in. So in one podcast, you can just switch. The beauty about that, you can just go to where you want to listen to, and you just listen to that 20 minutes of just that and go away, and then look for some other person. But then once you listen to that and maybe something like that comes up again, cards on YouTube can then recommend that for you. So yeah, both with technology and also this podcast is really, the team is a team of friends. So it's something you can do over and over and over because the people that do it love it. They're
Okay.
attached to it.
Now I'm curious. Do you listen to other podcasts as well?
Yeah, I listen to your podcast. I listen to a few also. Yeah, I listen to your podcast. I've listened to like 5 episodes now.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I listen to other international podcasts, right?
Yeah.
The
Tell me
Ugandan
about those.
podcasts I've listened to, I think it's just yours.
Here.
Yeah. Just yours, and randomly I've listened to snippets of like the Tribe UG, snippets of the Mob Jazz podcast.
Oh,
Yeah, but really episodes that I've sat down to listen have been yours. I am a big fan of your voice. I've told you this.
thank you.
But internationally, I listen to the Alex Friedman podcast a lot. I listen to Joe Rogan, of course. I've learned so much from there. I pick so much information on those podcasts, right? So for me, it's not a variety. It's just those specific people that I keep going back to because of how they're having conversations with people and that type of information I'm interested in. I realize if I want anything international, I'll find it discussed somewhere on Joe Rogan. Then, yeah. I keep
How now that you mentioned, how often do you release your episodes? Do you have have you sent a timeline like every
So initially I was doing it every week, but now I do it whenever the episode is ready.
Oh,
Yeah,
why? Why did you change?
Because it doesn't matter. It's really just a podcast.
Right?
Yeah,
You're
that
not
you don't have. I don't want to curtail people that 8 p.m. you're going for morning preps. I feel like that's so classroom.
I know. I've tried it and
Anytime you want to find it, the episode is ready.
I'm
You want to find this
struggling.
person, go search for it, find it. It's there. Because the content I'm producing is content for Antiquity. Yeah, I could blow up 10 years from
Right.
now
See,
with just one episode from like the back.
when that lady passed on, Josie,
Exactly.
I was like, yo, this is such a great time to be alive. Like the lady is gone. There's like bunches of information of her speaking. Like your life lives on, you know.
Exactly.
So
So yeah, that
do
is something.
you wait for like, should I say motivation? Do you wait for like inspiration to happen to you, or do you have like a content rollout plan for like this episode?
No, I don't have a content rollout plan, but there are a lot of tools right now that can guide the direction of the conversations I want to have with people, basing on their lifestyles. So I can use AI to give me sense of direction basing on what I've read about you or stuff I've read about you. Then that informs my conversations. But the content is just that. It's your perspective to life. That's what I'm basing on.
Okay.
So again, only humans tell their stories, and only you can tell your story. So I give you that chance to be as authentic as you can with your story and listen to it as is.
Okay. So when you're introducing yourself, you said you do a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Now, I want to understand, how do you balance up all that and still get time to do this? For the
So
guys that for the guys that are listening in, this gentleman has a great studio setup. I'll share how it looks like on my socials. So I want to understand, how do you manage to pull whatever else is happening in your life and pull this off? This is great.
One, I told you I was a salesman, right? That feeds into the fact that I am also a digital marketer. Like that's where I've branched in. That's where I've seen there's a need to improve how people present their businesses to others.
Okay.
So I'm investing heavily in that. Now, the work I do is work I do on my computer. right? And it's work I do because it's fun. Then, because the podcast is produced by a production house, which is almost like a digital marketing agency, because content is like oil, right? I'm investing heavily in content, and everything else I'm doing has to feed into content, right? If I'm selling a sales plan or a marketing plan, it's going to be content. So I merge them like that. It's one chain of the same things I'm doing, but just different departments. Now I'm podcasting, but it's still going to give more props to my podcast from here. The people that listen, now I'm going to share your funds. The people that listen to you are going to listen to this, and then are going to be curious. They'll go and find big conversations, right?
Okay.
The same when I share this on my podcast, they'll look for your podcast and they'll be about that. So it's interconnected in a way that it's one job altogether.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm doing the same thing with just different segments
Okay.
all through.
Now, how do you feel being on the other side of this thing? I mean, I'm the one asking the question.
Dope, amazing. And because again, I am not like the smartest human being,
Okay, if you say so.
it's always interesting to be the one answering things. Because yeah, I've asked so many questions. I'm still asking people questions, but also I really just have conversations, right? If a question pops up now, I'm going to ask you about your podcast. I'll ask it. So it's just that interactions, conversations, speaking to people. I find it more fulfilling. I find it more energetic. It's healing when you talk to someone and listen to their story. For example, Josie, yeah. The whole time I was having conversations with her on the podcast, she was telling me she's in pain at some point, but then she could smile along when she
Did
tells
she
you.
say exactly what she was going through?
Yeah, like she would explain you just go and listen to the podcast. She would explain her pain in some way. So I had the first conversation with her at Belwether. It was her birthday sometime in July 2022, I think. So
She was here?
no, because the studio was not here, but they did a hosting from Bellwether in Chanja. Now Bellwether has a pool, right? It was an infinity pool. She needed to be in the pool because it was her birthday and her friends, but she could not be in the pool. Like she could not be in the pool for long, because then she could get like an attack or something like that. But then she would make it seem like nothing is happening. But then yeah, so that
You have to admire her strength.
exactly her strength was something. So such things.
Speaking of stories, and now I'm curious, what's your story?
What do you mean? What's my story?
You know what I mean? I mean, you ask people all the time, what's your
Yeah,
story?
not really.
What experiences have brought you to where you are today, that have shaped your mindset, that have shaped your personality, your composure, your...
Oh yeah, I think the biggest is I broke up with a really, 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 really sweet person.
Okay.
I think I betrayed them in life. That was about 7 years ago. And the fact that I could lose them, technically the two people, right? The woman and the child. But the fact that I can't lose the child. But that I grew up seeing my dad and mom all together all my life.
Oh, they're still together.
Yeah, they're still together up to now. That's all I've grown up seeing. Family, a man comes up to the wife and blah, 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 you sort of stuff. So I've grown up in like a family setting. So it was like something I treasure so much. I still do, right?
Okay.
So when God gave me a chance to experiment with that, I fucked up. I failed. And that then molds my understanding to life and not to take things for granted, even when you should. Yeah, to just really, I could say I feel because of my ignorance, right? The things I didn't know that I had to do, the things I didn't know that I had to say, like that. The fact that I failed because of my ignorance is why now I focus so much on being the best version of myself as much as I can. So that so that, and life in general, life is interesting, right? It's very unfair.
It is.
And like kindness is like the strongest superpower you can have,
It's
but
be
then
kind to someone else.
it's such a hard thing to do in the type of life we live in right
Today.
now. Yeah. Because there are triggers everywhere. Yeah, there are distractions and triggers everywhere. It's very, very hard for you to have focus. So you might skip the fact that someone is going through worse than you, So yeah, the fact that I've been through what I think is the worst. Then I've met people that have been through terrible things.
Yeah.
That is my story. I just want to put up a fight for whoever is watching, mostly the kids, to know that there's a greater day tomorrow, right? So that's what I do because I don't let money define me, much as I don't want it to neglect me, right? I want to always make the money, but then I don't want it to define me. I want to be as real as I can with because I've had it all at some point and I've lost it. I'm trying to get it back. Like in my perspective, like some people.
Do you think you had it too soon?
No, I'm still young. I mean, I'm gonna double whatever I've had before.
Oh.
I'm gonna like triple that. Like I already see that happening. I have my future is so bright. I'm doing a podcast. It's amazing. I sit into meetings with people and I see what they need and then go back concentrate on to maybe producing that. So I see that in 10 years I could be the biggest version of myself from now, and that has not happened yet. So there's hope for that.
That's really nice to hear, which makes me think about the whole reason I have my podcast. I wanted you to say something about so my podcast is called the Evolve with Intent podcast.
Yeah.
The reason as to why I started it was I want people who think like that, people who don't think you're just going through the day for zero sense of compass or so I wanted to say something to I know the people that are going to listen in here are people in our age bracket, really, who are clueless. They're probably obsessed with things that don't matter. The iPhones, the social status, the likes. Like we're such a lost generation that we are wasting time with things that don't matter. Now I want you to say something about trying to become the best version of yourself.
Listen to listen to people that have made it, right? They have common story.
There is listening. I mean, you see,
I mean, when you're listening to people that have made it and the common story, you do not. The biggest problem people get always is character assassination, right?
what
You'll
does
hear
that
a
mean?
a guy has made it because they're a pastor, right? But then you hear a story they had infidelity with someone's wife. Then you forget the fact that them being successful is because they are pastor and they've been showing up in their church every single day. You know why I'm using the pastor thing is because it's very easy to see a church from Bibati, then you see it construct because the guy shows up every Sunday from the time he's doing the Bibati to the time he's driving a Range Rover. Yeah. Now the consistency is always kept, and then you go into he's stealing people's money and whatnot and whatnot, but you're forgetting this man has been showing up every
Single day.
single day for this. So that there's always that common story, right? And it's not a myth. You have to believe that you want to be a better version of yourself.
How do you find yourself? I mean, apart from you always knowing you were the vocal person, apart from the podcast, the other things that you love to do with your life. Now, I want you to say something about that. How did you find yourself? Because
I don't think I found myself completely. I feel like I am struggling with my feelings a little bit. There's that. I'm struggling with how I feel, how I want to. I'm a lover. I believe in. Oh,
sorry, you believe in
yeah. Sorry, I just didn't know I had that meeting.
in how long?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Let's keep it. So I'm kind of like I believe in. I don't think it's what I believe in, but I believe in being a nice person, like
Oh,
whatever
what?
a nice person, like
Okay.
in whatever way you think that feels. But life is such a roller coaster, right? You cannot know what's going to happen next. So what was the question again?
How did you? I want to know. Apart from our emotional sales, really, I want to know how did you find that you're a marketeer, that you're a salesman?
Oh no, I've
In
been
finding
okay.
a sales
Okay.
to either read books that help you become a better salesman, apart from just wasting time with God knows what, and then waking up later to realize, oh my God, my years have passed and I don't have anything to show for it. Because I think for me, that's my biggest fear. I do not want to be the same person I was 3 months ago.
That's amazing. But also, really, I'm such an optimistic person. Like in whatever challenge I'm facing in life, I still hope for the best. Like genuinely hope for the best. I am looking forward to tomorrow being better than today.
Okay.
So I can't say like I found myself completely, but that's the process, right?
You're doing the work.
Yes, and that is the most interesting thing. Like I don't even think about I don't want to be rich because I've been rich before. Like that's all I know. So everything else is just noise to me, right? That's what I believe, and that's now I'm putting in the work because the work is the most interesting part about it.
Okay.
It's not that point where because the guys that have made it are singing, I'm lonely at the top. The top is so heavy. This side it's boring. Whatnot. So you have to fall in love with the process so that you get to the top and find out if it's boring or not.
Okay. Now, I'm going to switch back to the podcasting side. But you said no. I'll just ask. What's the craziest thing that has happened on an episode while you were recording?
Uh,
Lost the file. Lost the whole episode.
Lost Hillary's video file.
Oh, but you had the audio.
Yeah, so we published the audio, but the audio was a bit squibby as well. It didn't come out very well, and it is an episode we liked, right? It was like our banger episode. We knew the views were gonna come in. He was gonna fetch in who was so popular. Then he came onto there, but then we failed with the audio, so it fed into how many of our numbers we dropped.
And you couldn't ask him to redo it.
No, I can. I do business,
You should,
but it's just that there's no need yet, right? So wanna like have a follow up. I have conversations with Hillary literally every day. I talk to him so much. So, but there's no need for him. He doesn't need the need to come back yet. Okay, now he's gonna come back because there's like a studio. So he's gonna come back to see progress. Talk about maybe from what we talked about. We're talking about oil and gas and the future of that. See where that is standing. So there's need for that. But there was time. He's the type of guest that connects with so many people, and he feels the need to only come speak something when there's need for it to be out. So we're waiting for that time.
Are there guests you wish you could have on this episode? You never know, they may be listening in and they reach out.
From where? From around the world? Yes, I want to have Joe Rogan.
Here or anywhere in the world.
I want to have Joe Rogan. I want to have I'll talk to anyone. It's really everyone is ordinary to me. So anyone, I want to talk to anyone as long as you're interested in having a conversation. I can have that with you.
It has to be big though. I don't think anyone counts.
Yeah, but then that's the thing. It's big is relative to everyone's perspective to life.
I get you.
So and that's the thing. So I've gotten feedback that is extreme bad, and I feel it from even my dad.
What's the worst feedback you've gotten?
Always, this person didn't have a value to come on the podcast. You bring these girls because you want to fuck them. They're just pretty girls. They don't have any sense. They're slay queens. Because I've had slay queens on my podcast. Like people refers. I've had Sheila Parker here, where I was directing her the questions. Then I pause. Then I'm like, okay, answer like this maybe. But because that was the experience with her, and she felt like she needed to be on the podcast. So to me, it's just a perspective and the things she would want to talk about.
So
but then people have told me that
if someone reached out and you didn't think they'd, I mean, of course you give them a chance, but if someone reached out and they wanted to do an episode with you,
unless they're advertising something, but if they're just having an ordinary conversation, that's
so you'd have anyone. I should call my mom.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk to your mom. I'm still trying to convince my dad to come on the podcast. He has an issue with me swearing on the podcast and whatnot, but then it's bigger than him and his values, right? So that there's that.
Would love to hear from the man in whose footsteps you're trying to walk in.
Okay, there's that. Also, the man made me listen to a lot of CBS when I was growing up. Whenever we're going in a car, so that also informs the fact that I like sit-down conversations. Because I could listen to a lot of guys, Bibozi, Bimeza, what, all that stuff.
Okay, so now tell me about the future of big conversations, ordinary people, and that's at first, and then tell me about the future of podcasting. Where do you see this going? But first start with, where do you see big conversations, ordinary people in the next 6-12 months?
Big, we have big as big, really. 6-12 months is enough time. We'll have sponsors on there, I think, that are bringing money that's valuable for us. And that's converting from how much time we've invested into the podcast. Okay. So hopefully all the meetings and the energies we are having with people and the sense of direction we're trying to show them is going to pay off then, because it's just quite visible. You can't hide away from the podcast. It's us. People don't trust the news that much. The news is you have to face the fact that social media breaks things before anyone else. So you have to speak to people that have developed, people that believe into them. The people that listen to my podcast come to listen to my podcast because they're listening to the stories I am putting on there. It's no agenda. It's no nothing. I'm not trying to convince you about anything. You just listen to that. So that community is going to grow. It's in, and if I keep doing it, at some point, I'll be the definition of how you define your truth. So there's that as well. So it's big in whatever way you can imagine it, right?
Do you feel Ugandans are warmly embracing podcasts?
I feel they have to. There's very you can't. Content is king, right? There's so look AI right now. I can have conversations with you even without you here.
Yeah.
So you can't avoid it. Like I'll find a way of talking to your mom
Ugandans
for
need
your
to get
case.
it together.
They'll get it.
I feel
And
like we
everything
are.
that happens in the US then trickles down here. at some point.
Ugandans spend a lot of time on TikTok and
that's fine.
Have you been to Gazaland?
Yeah.
I've been to Gazaland several times doing my hair, and I noticed that there is free Wi-Fi. I thought, okay, not free Wi-Fi. There is
My
one
UG. Is it
something
still
like
active?
that. Ugandans spend a lot of time on TikTok, which is a great platform, but I feel like our attention spans also at the same time are very low. So tell me about the future of podcasting in Uganda. Let's say we're having a
It's going to become more interactive, but finish the question.
yeah, like imagine a should I call it a podcasting masterclass or conference in the future? Where do you see that?
Yeah, it's going to become more interactive, right? I have a podcast conversation at the KTS symposium next week with Patrick Ayota from NSSF.
Okay.
Now it's interactive. It has like guys. The guys will ask questions, and this is how people want to relate with people. So the theme this time is around climate change and whatnot, but also with Patrick on the fireside conversation. It's about now you're CEO. Now what, right? What's the step? What's next? So
Most
such
people
stuff.
think about those things too. Like the now what syndrome. I used to have that a lot. Like after I achieve something, I'm like, okay, now what? And I'm like, huh?
So that then it's very personalized, right? With machine learning, you're only going to listen to one episode because you have to listen to it, right? You probably be going in for a marketing masterclass or a lecture. Then who will show up? Then Jonathan Wamala will show up on to the podcast. You will learn like it that.
Okay.
So what else with podcasting and the future? It's very promising. You can monetize on there. I think Mob just makes money. I don't know, but I think guys are making money. It's also diverse. It's the fastest way you can have information sieved to tailor only your needs or what you want to listen to. So
Yeah,
that's a
what you
beautiful
niche
thing.
down.
Yes, I've learned so many things from the Lexi Friedman podcast. I've learned so many things, even about things I'm not supposed to be knowing, like the Gaza Palestine war and whatnot,
I
like
don't
the
know what
Russian
that is.
stuff. So you just listen on and get
I
perspectives
know.
from
I
like
know.
people that are industry experts. So that
And
it's the way to go. Podcasts will go into school, right? There's a plan we're working on for like the future. We also tried to start it previously with Smart. That's like a schools magazine that wanted to do digital. It's by a friend of mine. So podcasts will be how classes want to educate people, right? Because then if I can get a marketing expert here and then tailor questions to a different level of say digital marketers or influencers or whoever is trying to learn, and they can't give them when you're speaking to people, you're almost getting the cream information out of the whole process. If you can then pick from that, yeah,
okay.
that's
Now, as we wrap up, in your experience here, are there mistakes you've done over the 2-3 years that
so
have
many.
shaped you to become a better person? Give me 5.
So many. I don't know. I've had conversations where I don't even know what I'm saying on their podcast.
Why?
Yeah,
Haven't you prepared enough?
yeah, that's the thing. Also, it's a bit freeway. So, is there such a thing as preparing enough?
I know.
Cameras are very scary.
They are.
You have to watch what you say. So sometimes what you're prepared for, what the guests come along with. Then some people, because we are living in such a world where it's such a facade, right? So how you see people present themselves on the internet, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and what
Can be different from who they actually
exactly.
are.
So when they come and have the conversation, it's far from everything you think and believe in. So there's that.
Oh Lord.
So many mistakes on sound, on quality, on lighting. We're still struggling with that a bit. So, but we were finding ways. So it's like a process of learning and perfecting and trying to perfect, because we want to be perfect. So we enjoy the process to that. Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of making money, I plan on doing a masterclass one of these days on podcasting here, and I should. I think this is a great space, really, and I'll mention the part whereby if you're looking for a podcast space to shoot your,
Thank you.
this would be.
How are you going to do the masterclass? Can we come on as partners?
Sure.
Okay.
What do you have in mind? We'll talk.
I don't
we'll
know.
talk.
I don't know
We'll-
about your vision, but if I feed into it and it makes sense to me, and why not?
Okay. Is there anything you feel like I've left out that I'm supposed to ask you, that you were expecting me to ask?
No. I think you've asked everything.
Have I underdelivered?
You've delivered so much.
Okay, my
You're such a
time is
brilliant
done.
person. That's dope. Thank
Do you
you.
have questions?
How long have you been doing your podcast?
About 14, 15 months. A year and
Why
about
are you
2
doing
months.
it?
What?
Why
Why am I?
doing the podcast?
Oh, why am I doing my podcast? It started. I'll just give you the story. When I finished school, I was working at some place really, and my friends thought I was privileged. They thought I was lucky. They thought I was a planned kid, like how people today say. And I figure when you talk with them, you'd realize they actually really don't know what to do. And then at the time, I really used to write. So when my mentor flew in the country, at that time, he was like, he was like, I should advance. People do read, but like you should try and do like put the information out in multiple ways. It's like, so the things you keep writing about, if they are from your head, while you write them, why don't you just sit down and record an episode and put it out there? Now the things I was actually drawn to at that time were like help. I figured I knew so much, and I'm not bragging. Like I knew basic things like etiquette. Like if you go, it started as a way of telling my peers what to do. If you're going to apply for a job, please dress this way, speak this way, or present yourself this way, or how to make a perfect first impression. And somehow it just grew. I just kept feeling like there was more that they don't know that I know, and the podcast would be a great way to tell them. Yeah, that's and I mean, 12 months later, I same vision really. Maybe I've just outgrown some things. I feel like some things are like small talk, but when you go back to like the first episodes, that's what it was about.
Will you stop?
No, no. I think it will just keep evolving. Really, some things lately feel like small talk to me. Like I don't like talking about them. I'm like, you're supposed to know that.
Do you want to do visuals?
Do I?
Are you going to migrate from just audio to YouTube?
Yeah. Once it grows and I get perfect equipment like the one here, yes, I'll definitely do that. I tried to do some with my phone, but yeah,
What sort of legacy are you leaving behind?
one that I impacted other young people's lives to live as intentionally as Josie's life was. Like, I'm telling you, I didn't know that girl. I saw her. I saw the news of her passing like on a Saturday, Friday evening, and for some reason, I was so drawn to her story that she knew, and she spent her time trying to. She wasn't even trying to make money off of it. She was just trying to help another person. So for me, the legacy I want to leave behind is I'm not the smartest, like you said, I'm not brilliant. I don't have my life figured out yet, but I know I'm in a place of privilege where things I know that other people don't know, that things that actually set me apart, which I know for a fact a lot of young people don't know. Like we're such a lost generation. We are carried away with things that don't matter. We are not trying to find a purpose while we're living. We're just waking up, eating, dressing up, and repeating.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you for hosting me.
No,